and welcome to Market Insights. I am Lavina Emma. On today's show, we are taking to the skies to explore the significant developments in Nigeria's air transport sector. And as you know, Nigeria's recent air transport agreements have been holding immense potential for the country's economic growth. These agreements open doors for more international airlines to operate in Nigeria, fostering competition, driving down travel costs, and making air travel more accessible. Now, this translates to increased trade and tourism opportunities, creating a ripple effect that benefits various sectors. The planned expansion of aviation infrastructure is another key driver of progress. Modernization of existing airports and the development of new ones will create a more efficient, interconnected air transport network. Now, this will not only enhance passengers' experience, but also strengthen Nigeria's position as a regional aviation hub. So as Nigeria seeks to become a key player in the global aviation market, we are seeing a surge in investment in airport infrastructure, fleet expansion, and route network development. But what are the implications of this growth, and how will it impact competitiveness amongst Nigerian airlines and the safety of air travel and overall the passenger experience? So my guest this morning is Mr. Sam Orovwuje. He is the Director, Center for Public Policy, and he's joining me right here in the studio. So welcome to Market Insights, Mr. Sam.
Good morning.
Good morning to you also. I'm glad you're here this morning as we are talking about Nigeria's aviation sector and the impact of all these agreements and how it's going to affect the businesses and people traveling on using air transportation to travel. So yes, I mentioned earlier on that it will bring a lot of tourism to the country, but I still want to hear from your expert analysis on this. And okay, let's first of all start with now, what are the primary benefits of the new air transportation agreements for Nigerian airlines and the broader aviation sector?
I think what we're speaking to, which is the bilateral agreement that is signed between Nigeria and the United States of America. This agreement is not new. This agreement was signed far back 2000. That provisional agreement was in place in May in 2000. So it's taken 24 years to operationalize that bilateral agreement, and I think it's welcoming. It has a great potential for people-to-people development effort. What that means is that there'll be an opportunity for Americans to fly easily to Nigeria, and Nigerians easily to fly to the United States of America. The Open Sky Agreement on the part of the U.S. will provide some Nigerian carrier to be able to use that route, which will improve on the number of Nigeria operators that can fly into the American route. When we talk about tourism earlier, that will improve the tourism relationship. Then that kind of relationship too will include other sectors like the avionics sector, where you can rely on the technical expertise of the American aviation industry vis-a-vis the local airline operator that fly from Nigeria. So, and I think this is a welcoming development for Nigeria and from the U.S. And if you look at the public notice that was put by the U.S. consulate in Nigeria, it will be a win-win situation for both countries. It will enhance people-to-people relationship. It will improve on the business ecosystem. And this bilateral relationship that was operationally taking effect from May, though we have that provision already approved 24 years ago. So it's a welcome development. And I see how the aviation sector as a whole can take advantage of this new gateway or new destination, as it were, and how that can impact on the trade, particularly bilateral trade between Nigeria and the United States of America.
Okay, that's a very key factor to look at, the bilateral trade between Nigeria and America. So could you expatiate further on this, on how it's going to specifically benefit Nigeria, the bilateral trade?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, number one, people-to-people relationship. So once this agreement takes full effect from May 2024, after 24 years when that bilateral agreement was signed provisionally in the first instance, now people will have more direct flights connecting from Nigeria to the United States of America. That will open people-to-people relationship. And you talk about terrorism, which I mentioned earlier, people going for studies. So rather than going through other routes to get to the United States of America, this will create an avenue where you have direct connect flights from Nigeria into that space. Number two, Nigeria, people in the aviation sector can relate directly with the aviation sector in the United States of America, because this open sky agreement, which originally on the side of the U.S. Signed with Nigeria, will encourage more commercial flights between these two countries. And so once the commercial flights are improved upon, it will impact positively on the economy of both countries. Mind you, if you go to the U.S. consulate or the U.S. embassy, if you look at the number of people who want an American visa, the number is so large. And there's even a visa regime in addition to this bilateral trade agreement in terms of aviation, in addition to the 5-year reciprocal visa regime that Nigeria and the U.S. brokered just about 2 years ago. So this will improve on U.S.-Nigerian relation first and foremost, and that will improve on the image as well of Nigerian businesses when they are able to connect directly to the United States of America, commercial, people-to-people, businesses, even government-to-government relationship will improve tremendously.
Okay, well said. Thank you for that, Mr. Sam. Yes, we're looking forward to all these being implemented in the future. Okay, so now we know with this kind of new developments, okay, like you said, it's not really a very new development. It's been signed since the year 2000, but it's been implemented this year, made this year. Now, what challenges might arise from implementing this agreement, and how can we mitigate these challenges?
Okay, some of the challenges will come from the operators, whether they are going to be able to meet up with the regulatory framework of direct connecting flight, particularly commercial flights, whether what the operator call the aviation sector international politics that plays out in that sector, where you grant perhaps American airlines coming into Nigeria more flight opportunity compared to the ones that will leave Nigeria to the United States of America. So if we're able to iron out these challenges, I think it will be a win-win situation. So my suggestion here is that if you are granting the frequency to an American airline to come into the Nigerian airspace, maybe you have 5 frequencies in a week, then you should equally grant that number of frequency to a Nigerian airline that fly into the United States of America. So each of those critical hubs from the United States of America into Nigeria should equally be extended to the Nigerian aviation industry. So you're talking about Washington, you're talking about Maryland, you're talking about California, where you have a great dose of Nigerians who are resident in that area, so that it becomes a win-win agreement that is favorable to both parties that have signed this bilateral agreement. So once we're able to work out those logistics, fine-tune those challenges, then I think is a good win for both countries in terms of trade and people-to-people relationship, as we mentioned earlier.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Sam. Okay, I also have a guest who is joining us virtually this morning, and his name is Mr. Kazeem Sanusi. He's a federal level public sector navigation expert. So he's joining us via Zoom this morning. So welcome to Market Insights, Mr. Kazeem Sanusi. Okay, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Good to see you again.
Well, can you unmute your microphone? Okay, we seem to be having some audio issues with Kazeem Sanusi, but he'll be joining us shortly alongside Mr. Sam. So thank you so much for that, Mr. Sam, for going for that. Okay, so I believe Kazeem Sanusi can hear me now. Okay, thank you for joining the program, Kazeem Sanusi. Okay, we're talking about the impact and strategic implications of Nigeria's air transport agreement on the aviation sector right now. So I've been discussing this with Mr. Sam. He's the director for Center for Public Policy. So thank you for joining us this morning. So let's talk about the economic impacts of establishing airports in the 36 states of Nigeria. As you know, more states in Nigeria want to have airports in the country. So now, what economic impacts can we expect from establishing airports in the 36 states in Nigeria? An audio issue with Kazeem Sanusi's network. I don't think he can hear me right now. But don't worry, it will be rectified in a short while. Let me still discuss further with Mr. Sam. Yes, thank you so much for addressing these issues, Mr. Sam. Now, so what steps should be taken to address our infrastructural inadequacies within the aviation sector?
For me, I'd like to speak to the question that you put to Sanusi before we get in.
Certainly, please, you can.
Yes, I think it's not economically viable to set a port in the state of Nigeria. Let's be sure of that. We must look at the viabilities of those airports, and the airports should not be cited based on political consideration, as it were. But then, if you look at the state of our infrastructure, particularly the airports, the flying space, there's a great improvement in the Nigerian airspace. At least we have not recorded a major accident in the last few years. So kudos to those who are into the civil aviation space to be able to manage that sector. But then we need more remodeling of some of the airports in line with international best practices, so that when people come into your country, one of those elements that you use in measuring national brands, national identity, is the volume of tourists that are able to come into your country. An airport is a strategic gateway into your country. So we need to model some of those infrastructure, particularly from the airport, so that when people come, they see, first and foremost, a welcoming environment that encourages them to bring in their investment into the country, and they can come as a tourist, and that will be beneficial to Nigerians.
Okay, I like that. So would you say not necessarily establishing airports in the 36 states, but just we need to have more airports in Nigeria and promote more air flights amongst our people here then before we start talking about international flights?
In my view, I think we have sufficient airports. So if you're talking about international and domestic airports, you have to make a distinction. So what I think we have sufficient international airports. So what you need to improve on is the navigational aid in those airports and make them international standard airports that people can fly at any given point. The lighting systems or the navigational aid in terms of air traffic control must be put in place to the extent that flights can come in at any particular point in time. And I'm sure some of the things the American government will be looking at, particularly the civil aviation sector, that has signed up this agreement with us. So look at our infrastructure, particularly those ones that have international standard, where they can fly into Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja, Kano, Kaduna. Once you're able to put some strategic gateway coming into the country, then you have some other domestic airports that can serve those international destination airports that are equipped for modern aircraft, for bigger aircraft, and with sophisticated navigational aids that will sustain that partnership that we have signed into.
Okay, that's awesome. So if we have more airports in Nigeria and particularly like you rightfully said, international airports, it will boost our tourism sector and it will actually drive the whole the image of Nigeria as a very interesting hub to visit also. So now, what steps should be taken to address the existing infrastructural inadequacies within our aviation sector?
Number one, the technical side, the civil aviation is critical. So safety airspace, all the navigational aid, traffic control, terminals must be upgraded with modern technologies, using AI and machine tools to enhance the capacity for safety of the sector. Number two, remodeling the airports in line with best practices, particularly in line with ICAO standard that regulates international aviation transportation industry. Two, particularly in Nigeria, where you have a lot of unofficial transactions in the airport. So further effort should be made. Only those who have business being in the airport environment should be there. The perimeter fencing of some of these airports must be looked into, where you don't have stray animals, other stray objects coming into the airport, which are danger to the navigation system or environment, as it were. So once we're able to look at safety first and foremost, which is standardized, the number of aircraft, improvement on the routes, or the routes, as they say sometimes, coming in and getting out of Nigeria. More commercial licenses should be given to Nigeria operators so that they can fly in a commensurate standard with those coming into the country. If we're able to do that, the infrastructure standardization will help investors to come in and other carriers to take the Nigerian hub seriously as well.
I also have a guest joining me virtually via Zoom, and his name is Kazeem Sanusi. He's a federal level public sector navigation expert. So he's joined us now. Can you hear me now, Kazeem Sanusi?
Absolutely. Yes, I can.
Great to have you on the program. Welcome to Market Insights. So now, based on
Thank you
this
very much.
agreement that was signed between the United States and Nigeria, now this bilateral agreement, and it was signed in the year 2000, but it's being implemented in 2024. So how can Nigerian airlines leverage on the increased operational flexibility and code sharing opportunities that have been provided by the air transport agreement?
Well, I think to a very large extent, I'm not a fan of code sharing. And this is coming from tons and tons of experience. And I'm sure people who travel a lot would regularly would understand why code sharing, when it works well, but when you have issues, you really do have issues. And you may not be able to, it will come with a lot of discomfort. So in terms of improving, it should help our airlines to improve their offerings and all of that, and even scale up their operations, But the thing is, so if I speak generally about the agreement and what we have seen over the years in terms of agreements that Nigeria does sign, it's either we come into the picture late, just like now, where it was kicked off in 2000, now activated in 2024. It goes live, That's all 24 years in between. What are the dynamics then and over the time and now? And how much of our context as of today does this agreement that is finally going live, does it take cognizance of, So those are the kind of things. And I think to a very large extent, we then tend to all typically get the short end of sticks in international agreements, if you understand what I'm saying, by being latecomers. to the table, or by getting our acts together pretty late. So that's the way I see it. And so I think to the airport airlines, it helps them to improve their operational capabilities, technology adoption, and so many other things. It has a lot of value. But we want to be sure that in terms of the competitiveness of our local airlines, it does not then tilt the competitiveness scale in favor of the countries that we sign international air travel agreements with, in this case, the United States. Because then with that, it means that their own airlines and local airlines may also want to be able to play in the local space. And in that case, the Nigerian airlines and local airlines and international may not be able to compete in terms, because they will be coming with years of experience, with tons of liquidity, with much more aircrafts, with better operating capabilities and all of that. So you want to make sure that you at least regulate that space in such a way that we don't get our local players don't get railroaded out of the space. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Kazeem Sanusi. So what strategies should airlines adopt to compete effectively on a global scale?
So on a global scale, I would think, and I'm speaking purely as not as an aviation expert, but as a development expert. So I think to a very large extent, we do have a good, we have a local economy in the aviation sector that we haven't been able to even lock down. And then the regional economy. So in development, we look at things from the local to the regional to the subnational to different levels up until international. So how much, if we do not have that local capability, then we may not be able to feed the international, So we need to find, our airlines need to really look at not just the international leg, but also what leverages they can leverage on the local scene. And that comes to the question you were asking earlier about the all the states of the country looking to have their own airports. I think it is totally counterintuitive and it should be discouraged. Yes, mistakes have been made. People have started citing runways here and there. I think we can repurpose all of those things and go with a regional approach to aviation. And the reason is you need to aggregate. You need to aggregate the critical mass, and also make sure that we now dovetail all forms of transport to feed those regional airports until we grow the critical mass in other states. Let's go with regional airports. Let's discourage all these governors from practically wasting money.
Okay, so regional airports, we should just have perhaps one airport in the north, one airport in the south, one airport in the east, one airport in the west. We don't need too many.
In actual fact, we can disaggregate a bit further.
Well-standard and well-equipped international airports. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so we can disaggregate a bit further and say we're taking, can you hear me? Hello?
Oh yes, I can hear you. Please continue. I can hear you clearly.
Perfect. So I think we can disaggregate a bit further, and from spatial analysis, we can say we're looking at the 6 geopolitical zones. All right. We have the 6 geopolitical zones, and we say we retain one additional one in the southwest and one in the south and in the north central, being one former national capital, Lagos, and then the current national capital, right? And then we have the 6. So for the Abuja one would take care of the demand on its own side. Then the next one should be in Niger within the north central, which balances it out. But the idea is that within 3 hours of travel to or from the regional airport, you should get to where you're going. So, which is why we need to have that integrated approach where the Minister of Aviation is working with the Minister of Works, to make sure that these regional airports are serviced, are connected, the connections to all the states are in top shape. And then also with the security agencies to make sure that those routes to connect our regional airports are in good shape. And then we can co-locate a whole lot of things. The inland dry port, so many things can happen with that kind of mentality of aggregation and regionalization.
Okay, so I'm going to this question both to my guests in the studio and my guests virtually. So now, with this expansion of our aviation sector in Nigeria, how will it enhance air travel safety and security? We've been having issues of insecurity in Nigeria, but thankfully we haven't had any air accidents in recent times. But how will this expansion help to improve on our aviation sector in terms of air safety and security? So I'll start with you, Mr. Kazeem.
And so I don't think we can say that we haven't had mishaps. They've just not been serious. So when you spread yourself thin, that's what you get. When you spread yourself too thin, that's what you get. Every airline wants to go to as many states as possible. Want to go to as many destinations as possible. So there are economies of scale. What are your numbers? What are the aircrafts that you have? And then they also do a lot more of big jets. I remember one time and Kulula, they have very small jets, 100-seaters, 80-seaters and all that. And they were flying like every 30 minutes, every 1 hour, Those are the kind of things we need. Then more of propeller jets for the stability and all that. So we have to have we need to stop copying. We just need to stop completely copying without tuning to fit our own context. So models that work for other airlines overseas, we need to look at them and look at what will work for us. We have shorter distances to fly in Nigeria. We have shorter distances. We have the smaller numbers of people who can afford it, and then the cost is going high. So if cost of operation is high for your bigger jets, then you need to look at jets that reduce your cost of operation, because competition is not only in terms of profitability. Competition can also be in terms of savings. Savings in terms of operational costs. That would then ultimately increase your profitability, So those are the kind of things. The dynamics for Nigeria should be different, and we need to think about it differently. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kazeem. So, Mr. Sam, in terms of this expansion in our aviation sector, so how will it enhance air travel and safety and security in Nigeria?
I think I'm in line with the proposition by Mr. Sanusi. I think the airline should stay more competitive. It's not more about expansion. It's more being competitive within the local environment and find a way to see how we can put more smaller aircraft that are price sensitive because the flight duration, like you mentioned, within the country take place at a shorter travel time. So I think within that space, more investment should be put in place where they can acquire local aircraft that are price sensitive so that they can be able to meet their bottom line and see how they can compete favorably within those space. So expansion, not in terms of the number of airports, but expansion in terms of investment in smaller aircraft that can take cognizance of our local peculiarity, flying peculiarity, and most of those airlines can see viable in terms of the investment that they have made in those sectors. The pricing regime currently, to a very large extent, is very scary for some people who want to fly, particularly between Lagos and Abuja, Lagos and Kano, Lagos and Port Harcourt. So if we have smaller aircraft, there are some airlines that are already operating in those space. So if they can make more investment to acquire smaller aircraft, they become more competitive and people can fly around. So I support those regional hubs based on the geopolitical configuration, rather political consideration, making every governor or government want to site airports in their state capital, and most of those airports are not viable for operation of some of those airlines.
Okay, well said. Thank you for that, Mr. Sam. So now, still going further on this. We know we're in the 21st century, and we know technology has really aided us, especially with the use of AI. So now, what role will technology play in enhancing the passenger experience and improving operational efficiency in Nigerian airports? So let me start with you, Mr. Kazeem Sanusi.
I'm glad you mentioned this, because one of the things I was going to say is the biggest challenge in our local aviation sector is the service levels and customer experience and then regulatory oversight. So I'm glad that this is coming. So technology has really puts everything at people's fingertips. So for instance, we can have a system that contributes to the dashboard of any company. If we want to take it to that level, where we're rating each company, where are the rating agencies, for instance, in the aviation industry? What are they doing with our local aviation firms to rate the customer experience, rate their operations, rate their safety standards, and all of that? These kind of things, the technology would put: one, it's easier to access their services. Two, it's easier to pay. Three, it's easier to follow up. Four, it's easier to lay your complaints and reach out to the ombudsperson, who can then ping into their system and see the chain of that you followed, the regular channels to lay complaints and all that, and how it has been resolved, or if you're happy or if you're displeased and all of that. And then also, that's on the side of the customer experience. Also on the side of availability, travel with management systems. You want to know what is happening. A lot of the airlines, you get on the site and well, typical to most sites in Nigeria. I think it's our standard issue in Nigeria. But the ICT system is just down. Sometimes we have those downtimes. So do we want to look at where do you want to site your servers? Do you want to have local or disaggregated server systems that can, at least ICT people will be able to add a bit more flesh to this. But I remember working with a firm that had branches across the world, and no matter what happens to the internet, we can work. We had disaggregated servers in different parts of the world that you can still continue your work, and everything would then integrate and synchronize when everything goes back to normal. So we need to have those kind of things. And then in terms of safety standards, what are the safety technology improvements that we need to make in all our airports? A lot of our airports are not well, you can imagine what it means to go into an airport and the scanners are not working and they're doing physical checks. You can imagine the potential. And scanners not working could be deliberate if something bad is going to happen. So you can just play it in your head and see the risks that we sit with and the risks that we fly with. You go into public facilities and you need to depend on human beings to conduct searches, to validate that this person is clean, these bags are clean, it is totally uh, let's just say irresponsible. I think that's the word for anyone to subject us to those levels of risk, and it happens a lot in our airports, scanners down, the systems down, they don't have hand scanners, there are no sniffer dogs, there are no, and you put people, breadwinners in those kind of situations. Yes, Nigeria has not gotten to that point, but nobody can even say how we're growing in the area of crime anymore. So it's irresponsible for anyone not to pay attention to that now, So, and to all of these things, technology does help us to move things from the manual to a state where we can track and we can observe without, and also we can also generate data and databases, and also look at what are the trends, what are the dynamics, so we can't avoid that. And I think we have to be very deliberate in going towards in trajectory towards technology. Thank you.
That's Kazeem Sanusi. So before we wrap up the program now, I know you mentioned that Nigeria has gotten, because we didn't implement this bilateral agreement on time, it looks like we have the shorter end of the stick. But as you rightfully mentioned, there are lots of opportunities for Nigerian airlines with this agreement. So going forward, I'm quite sure that we'll still have more partnerships with the foreign airlines. So could we just talk briefly on the opportunities that exist for foreign investments and then partnerships in Nigeria's aviation sector with foreign airlines?
Great. So I think, like I said, there is a space of the local that's within Nigeria, then local within West Africa, local within Africa, right? And Nigeria plays a very position of let me say, I'll actually say in Africa, Nigeria occupies the position of unfair advantage if we know how to play it right. The whole of Africa wants to come to Nigeria. The whole of Africa wants to do things with Nigeria. Yes, they have different levels of concerns or issues or misgivings with Nigeria or Nigerians, but Africa cannot do without Nigeria. They can't write Nigeria off. So why are we able to leverage on that? Do we have local operators who can come together, or from a single one or two or three, so that we can also have competition? We have 1, 2, or 3 strong parties who are looking in the direction of the local economy, the aviation economy, and then use that to attract foreign investments to back them. Because if you do not, what we are saying now, what we are analyzing as the opportunities in these areas, right? Foreign firms would come in and take up those opportunities because they see your numbers. They see your numbers, they see the closeness of your destinations. You understand, you can't compare flying within Nigeria or even West Africa with flying in the US, where you're doing 7-hour flights locally. You're doing 1-hour flight to Ghana, and you still don't know how to maximize it. So the people who know how to maximize it will step into the space. Their concerns currently may be the fact that, we don't know how to navigate the security space in Africa, and all of those concerns. But the day they crack it, they will swoop in, and local firms will lose out. So the earlier, the better. Look at your context, look at coming together in instances for all of these, and then you can attract the foreign direct investments. And of course, there's a lot of funds locally looking for where to go. So we shouldn't only look at foreign direct investments. There is also that pool of funds within the country that could be accessed. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Market Insights, Kazeem Sanusi. It's been, as usual, always a pleasure having you on the program. Many thanks for your time. And hopefully one of these days you could join us live in the studio.
Great. I look forward to that. equal to that.
Okay, so thank you for your time. Yes.
Thank
Before we
you.
round up the program, yes, Mr. Sam, do you agree with Mr. Sanusi's final words on how local airlines can come together to maximize the opportunities before the foreign airlines come and take over everything?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I agree with him. The competitiveness has to come within and without. Let's explore even the potentials even within the African continent. The viability and the potential is enormous, and we think that governments within Africa should find a way to improve on the visa regimes to encourage local entrepreneurs, particularly in the aviation sector, where they can take advantage of the flights even within Africa and take that competitiveness, particularly from the foreign sharks that are likely to take those opportunities from us if we don't take advantage of our own environment or the kind of even investment that we have within Africa. So absolutely I agree with Sanusi's suggestion.
Okay, thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Sam. It was really a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure.
Okay, let's just look at our money markets figures this morning, how the Naira is selling against the US dollars and the pound sterling and the euro. So look at the CBN rates and the parallel market rates. So for today, Thursday, 6th June, today at the CBN rates is 1,500 Naira to $1. At the, I beg your pardon, the CBN rates is 1,481 Naira to $1, and the parallel market rate is 1,500 Naira to $1. And for the pound sterling, it's at the CBN rate is 1,893 Naira to £1 sterling, and that's at the CBN rate. At the parallel market rate is 1,900 Naira to £1 sterling. And for the euro, it's 1,475 Naira to €1. That's CBN rate. And the parallel market rate is 1,600 Naira to €1. So those are our money market figures this morning. So thank you. Thank you so much for watching Market Insights, and I want to thank my guests, Mr. Sam and Mr. Kazeem Sanusi, for joining me this morning as we talked about the impact and the strategic implications of Nigeria's air transport agreements on our aviation sector. It's been great having you both on the program, and I look forward to having you again on Market Insights. So I am your host, Lavina Emma. Many thanks for watching.